Welcome to our second Wednesday workshop of the 2025 Leadership Alliance Virtual Professional Development Series. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jane Indorf, and I'm the Manager of Programs with the Leadership Alliance, coming to you live from Providence, Rhode Island. I'll be moderating today's session, which is all about professional networking and communication. Thank you to all our students who submitted questions ahead of time. We received so many great ones, and I hope that we're able to touch upon all the topics and themes of most of them today. And so for those of you who are tuning in live, you can use the Q&A box to ask questions during today's session. And we also have the chat enabled where you can introduce yourself, let us know where you're coming from and what your major is. Just make sure in the you switch it to everyone instead of hosts and panelists. And yeah, we love to know who's here with us today. So please go ahead and introduce yourself. Okay. Making professional connections and communicating with confidence are essential skills, whether you're looking for internships, research roles, or preparing for life after graduation. During today's session, we'll be talking about why professional communication and networking are so important for grad school and for pursuing a career in research, as well as how students can go about building a professional network. We'll also discuss tips for effective communication in academic and professional settings. This topic is near and dear to my heart as someone who is more of an introvert. So today we will be giving tips and tricks for those like me who sometimes are a little nervous when they're talking to people and networking. So I'll learn today too. All right. It is my honor to briefly introduce today's speakers, all of whom have been part of Leadership Alliance for many years, the Leadership Alliance community. Joining us today is Dr. Arnaldo Diaz Vazquez, Associate Dean at the UT Southwestern Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences and Assistant Professor in the Department of Pharmacology. Dr. Diaz Vazquez oversees several research and education training programs, including the UT Southwestern Summer Undergraduate Research Fellowship Program, the AmGem Scholars Program, and the UT Southwestern Post-Bac to PhD program. In addition, Dr. Diaz Vazquez co-directs the UT Southwestern Provost Initiative for Development of Emerging Scholars, which provides early career scientists support and helps facilitate their transition into independent faculty positions. We also are joined today by Dr. Karina Gonzalez Herrera, who is the Associate Dean of Diversity and Inclusion Programs in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Yale School of Medicine. In her current role, Dr. Gonzalez Herrera oversees members of the Yale School of Medicine Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and is responsible for the implementation of efforts to welcome and support current and prospective members of the Yale School of Medicine community. She's working in partnership with Yale leadership and stakeholders to develop and implement initiatives to recruit and support a diverse, inclusive, and welcoming biological and biomedical sciences graduate student community. We also have with us today here Dr. William Wittels, who is the Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs at Brown University's Graduate School. In this role, he collaborates with and builds capacity in Brown's PhD programs to maintain and ultimately raise the standard of excellence in research, teaching, and mentoring for which graduate education at Brown is known. In addition, he's the point person for supporting any of Brown's 3,000 graduate students who are applying for external opportunities, such as those offered by the Fulbright and Dolores Zorab Liebman Fund Fellowship programs. Welcome to all of our panelists. Okay, so to get our discussion started today, I thought we could start by each speaker telling us a little bit more about their pathway to their current professional role and how networking has been a part of that journey and why networking has been important for that journey. So I see that Dr. Diaz Vazquez is already unmuted. So I will let him start us off. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jane, and thank you to the Alliance and Brown University for hosting this space. And thank you for to all the attendees. Today's I'll be sharing my kind of like personal opinions and path. I might not represent. I mean, they won't represent my institution. I mean, views. It will be my personal Pat, I'm from a really small town in Puerto Rico. I see a lot of students from Puerto Rico in the chat, so welcome, Puerto Rico, to the space. Um, Graduated from the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras, with a bachelor's in chemistry. I did the Leadership Alliance back in 2001 at Columbia University in New York City. I'm with Dr. Virginia Cornish, and I think that's when my networking skills development started with the Alliance. I was very introvert, very quiet. And so for me, who I am today is a lot to do with a network that I built through the years. Graduated from Puerto Rico, came to Texas for the first time to Texas A&M for a PhD in biochemistry, and then I went to Penn, University of Pennsylvania, for a postdoc in cancer pharmacology, and there I did transition into a different career. So I was at the bench doing mass spectrometry, but I did transition into higher education and administration, and I kept in touch with the Alliance. I was the director of SR-EIP at Penn. And for those of you, I mean, that are from Penn here in the chat, and I was the director and as well the institutional coordinator for the Leadership Alliance. So I think my networkings with the Alliance after that summer started when I did reach out. I sent a cold email to Medeva Guy, and she used to be the executive director of the Alliance, and Joel Oppenheim, a big name in the Alliance. And I asked if there will be an opportunity for me to engage with the Alliance, and I was invited to be part of a committee that put the conference together. So that's when I started interacting. This was as a grad student. This is when I started interacting with the Alliance members. Then at Penn, I was at Penn for 10 years, and then I transitioned to UT Southwestern 5 years ago. But all the individuals that I have met throughout my career are part of my network. Some of them were, I mean, crucial in some transitions in my career. Some, I mean, but that network, even this is something important. It's not somebody that you will need every day, but it's somebody that was important in one step in your career, and you have to maintain those relations. So for me, the Alliance is that. It's a big family. It's a huge networking opportunity. That's when I met also Karina Gonzalez Herrera, that is in the panel today. That's when I mean, I see people on the screen, Gina Torini, John Ivy, Will, that we have met through the Alliance, and that's the network. So my current role, I'm the associate dean in the grad schools. I oversee summer programs, post-bac programs, postdoctoral programs. But other than that, in addition to that, I also, I mean, give talks on specific topics, and I do a lot of recruiting for the PhD as well as for the MD, PhD, and postdocs. I will leave it there, but I think networking is crucial, and you have to start early. It's not an easy task. It could be very intimidating. I think the word networking brings some stress sometimes, but it is, you have to start, I mean, slowly. You have to do it at your own pace, but it's something that is definitely going to help build your career. And you will also, for me, my network is helping me, but it's also helping my students. And I think that's the value. The people that I can connect with are empowering not just my path, but also the path of those that I'm helping. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Arnaldo. Yeah, that's a really important point that, you know, your network as you advance in your career not only helps you, but it helps those that you're mentoring, those students you're working with. Okay, we're going to go in alphabetical order. So next I'll have Dr. Gonzalez Herrera speak about her journey and networking.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane. And hello, everyone. Thank you for spending some of your time with us. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I'm also grateful to the Alliance, to Jane, and to everyone behind the scenes who's making this possible. So thank you so much. I'll start by sharing a little bit about my background and my trajectory, and hopefully through that you'll see some of the power of networking. But I have to say that a lot of what Dr. Diaz Vazquez shared really resonates with me. And also, Jane, what you shared in terms of being an introvert, I think I consider myself an introvert, although maybe others don't think of me in that way. But perhaps as I share my story, you'll see a little bit about why. So I'm originally from Guatemala. I moved to the United States at the age of 11. And I went through high school, but before I went through high school and in all of my K through 12 education, I had to learn a language. So keep in mind some of the obstacles that will come along the way and potentially why I consider myself more of an introvert for a very long time. And I've started to come out of my shell, and I'll tell you why, because I think some of these tips and strategies will be helpful in networking. I completed high school, and when I was in high school, I knew that my passion was science and math, but decided to pursue a career in science and attended California State University, San Marcos in Southern California, a small state university at the time that has grown over time. I got the best training, got to connect with a lot of different mentors, although at the time I didn't know the word mentor existed. And I think that was a little bit about the beginning of networking for me, without really realizing I was networking and identifying mentors to support me in my career and my goals. After completing a bachelor's degree in biological sciences, I pursued a master's degree for personal reasons. If I didn't have the personal challenges I faced, I would have gone on to apply to graduate programs. But once that situation got sorted out for me, I did apply to PhD programs, multiple institutions, ended up pursuing a PhD in biological and biomedical sciences at Harvard University, which I completed in 2016. And throughout my journey, I had always, I've been passionate about giving back. And so because of that, when it came to deciding as to what I wanted to do next, I had the option of pursuing a career in science and staying in science, which I love, and then pursuing a career in higher education administration, which is where I am now. And I also I'm passionate about what I do now. So I transitioned into a role at Harvard where I had the opportunity to co-direct various programs for students in high school as well as undergrad, a post-bac program. And then I also had the opportunity to work closely with graduate students in STEM. And so with that, I also decided to make sure that the expertise and opportunities that I had were, broadened and open to others, and decided to move to Yale School of Medicine in 2023, where I get to do what I'm passionate about, continuing to do some of what I shared, but also mentoring and giving back. And so as I think back about networking and how that has impacted me, I think one of the examples I would share is the connections that I was able to build through colleagues such as Dr. Diaz Vazquez. I think he's a great role model and really a great person to talk about networking, because I've learned a lot from him and other colleagues. But the networking has been impactful in identifying key mentors that fulfill various areas of needs for me. So I am the first in my family to have completed a bachelor's degree and then to have pursued a PhD degree. And for me, the needs are identifying opportunities, learning how to navigate spaces, knowing about what's out there. And so I have been able to fulfill some of those needs through the different connections that I have built, and looking forward to sharing some tips and strategies as to how to do that. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you so much, Karina. And Dr. Wittels.
Hi, everyone. My name is Will Wittels. I'm going to talk about, in thumbnail, the way in which different kinds of connections and specifically sort of mentor connections have shaped my career, and they have done it definitively so. So after undergrad, I briefly worked in politics, talk about a network-driven field. Hated it, definite introvert, and that was a really hard part, being out with people. Deciding that I wanted to go back to grad school for political science, one of the ways in which my network impacted me was I reached out to my old advisors from undergrad. and said, I'm interested in pursuing my PhD and the stuff that we worked on when I was an undergrad. What are some of the institutions where you know faculty and really sort of respect them and like them? And I think that connection was decisive in getting admitted to the program that I did at Duke University. That's where I did my PhD. So that's number one kind of mentor, a mentor who can give you some advice on what kinds of places you might thrive in, because they'll have been there, and also where they know people, so that you can kind of land with a friendly face. I mean, this is one of the wonderful things about the Leadership Alliance, is that at every institution there is that Leadership Alliance representative who's they're going to be there to take care of you because of that connection. The second piece is mentors who can tell you the kinds of skills that you need to learn and acquire. And these folks you can introduce yourself to in lots of different places. You can on panels like this, you can send a follow-up email and say, hey, I'd love to chat. And that's what happened for me. I met a dean and a faculty member while I was at Duke. And I just took them aside. Actually, this was after I graduated with my PhD and sort of wanted to go into academic administration. And I had a phone conversation with them, each of them, and said, hey, I just love to know a little bit more about your journey and the things that really were helpful to you, and that may or may not be helpful to me. And I think that's one important piece, to couch the conversation in those terms rather than what should I be doing? Because the truth is, if somebody doesn't know you, they don't know what you should be doing because they don't know what place they're starting from. But people are really good at talking about themselves and talking about what worked for them. And while that may not necessarily translate for you always, you might be in a different position, you can still get the principles and the ideas out of it. And you also make them feel helpful. You make them feel like their experiences were valuable. And I love that Maya Angelou quote about people forgetting what you said or what you did, but not how you made them feel. And your mentors, the people who are going to mentor you, want to feel helpful and they want to feel listened to. And a great way to make them feel helpful is to ask them for the kinds of the information that we're sharing right now. So that was the second kind of mentor, and that was folks I met at grad school. And then the third kind of mentor was sort of a connector for opportunities and projects. So I actually joined Brown. I was working at the Leadership Alliance. And during the pandemic, I decided I wanted a little bit more of a Brown-facing role. And I spoke to the provost who the organization reported to at the time. And I said, who here should I sort of be in touch with just to learn a little bit more about different kinds of administrative opportunities here at Brown? And one of the people that that provost introduced me to was Thomas Lewis, who was an assistant dean here at the graduate school at the time. He's now the dean. And when an opening as an assistant director for academic affairs came up, I applied for it. And, I'd gotten to know Dean Lewis a little bit and what kinds of things were done at the graduate school and what kinds of my skills might translate. So just to follow up or just to conclude rather, because I've been talking for a while, there are going to be different kinds of mentors, and you're going to want to look for, or rather different kinds of connectors, and you're going to want to look for them based on your need. We often talk about a mentoring mosaic. Different tiles have different shapes, but they all fit together for you. And at whatever stage you're at and whatever sort of need you have, you can sort of identify how to go about fulfilling that.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, you can't talk about mentoring or networking without talking about, can't talk about them separately. You got to talk about them together. So thank you for bringing up the mentorship component. Okay, so I'm going to go to some of the student submitted questions. And thinking about the introverts like myself out there, what are some tips for approaching professors or researchers or professionals when you're at a conference or an event? It's pretty scary. I mean, I was first or second year grad student at a conference with thousands of people. And I just found myself in the corner, not knowing who to even talk to because there were so many people. So what would you say to somebody who's in that situation, and how to start a conversation or how to approach it? And whoever wants to take that question can go ahead.
So I have one short piece of advice about that. Just email them before. So you'll have access to the program. If there are folks you want to talk to, a very straightforward email is, I see that you're going to be at this program, at this conference, Dr. So-and-so. I see that you're going to be, I loved your paper on X. Make sure you've read that paper. I'd love to pick your brain just to understand, maybe a little bit more about the work that you're doing or about, applying to graduate school, whatever those pieces are. And it's a very short email. Can I buy a cup of coffee and, pick your brain for 10, 15 minutes? And that way, in those down times at the conference between you actually have things to do. You have people to go and meet. And so that's it. That's my one piece of advice. Email them beforehand, ask for, 15 minutes of their time to pick their brain about something in particular. Some proportion of the folks that you email will respond positively. Others will probably be too busy. But if you reach out to enough relevant folks, then you're going to have a packed conference schedule and fewer of those awkward kind of standing around, I don't know what to do with myself moments.
I love that tip. You break the ice before you even really meet the person in person. Thank you.
Yeah.
Karina?
If I can add to that. Thank you, Will. That's a great piece of advice. I hadn't thought about it. Where were you when I was going through graduate school? But I think that's a great question, Jane. And one of the things I keep thinking about, and it'll come out as we continue to discuss how, like, the strategies and how to go about this networking, because I do have to admit there is, I was very hesitant for a while when it came to networking. And I think I've found a way around it. So I keep thinking back to the times when I used to walk with my father and, I was very young, maybe I was younger than 8 years old. And we would walk by and, people would come by and he would greet people. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how does he know all of these people? He must be really popular. But then I would ask him, like, oh, do you know that person? Some of them he did. It was neighbors. Some of them he didn't. And so I think one of the things that I learned from watching him do that was maybe a little bit of like developing the soft skills, but then also just being very polite and finding a way to connect with others, even if you don't know enough about them. Just something as small as, hi, how are you doing? Or good morning, how are you doing? And so as I think about the professional networking and over time, is being ready to connect with someone with something as small as, hi, how are you doing? How is the conference going for you? My name is, and just being ready with that elevator pitch and introduction. I don't know if we've talked about elevator pitch or not yet, but that's you coming ready and introducing yourself. Who are you? What you are currently doing in terms of your career trajectory. If you're doing research, a very brief point as to the kind of research you're doing, but what is your why and what do you want to do down the line? I think that those kinds of introductions where you come across as, this is who you are, this is what you're doing, and this is why you're doing it. I think for me, it helps me feel very comfortable and passionate about the work that I do, my why, and then, seeing how the other individual reacts. And then if they don't react, because perhaps they don't see this coming, then what you could do is saying, oh, how about yourself? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? And that's a way to connect with individuals. Perhaps it's not intentional networking, but one of the things that I would say is that a lot of the connections that I have developed, they haven't all been intentional, but there's always been something that I've been able to learn from the individuals I have met. And if it's not obvious and evident to me at the time, it's a connection that I have made that perhaps down the line I'll remember, oh, I met someone who was in this biotech at this conference, right? Or who was working in biotech or was working in this other area. And now I'm working with a student, let's say, who wants to go to biotech. This is an excellent opportunity for me to reach out to that individual and say, hi, not sure if you remember me, but we met way back at this conference. Currently work here, and I have a student interested in pursuing a career in biotech. Would you be able to find a few minutes to connect with my student for an informational interview to share a little more about your path and experiences? So those are kind of like the examples. And I think that's been something that's really helped me feel more comfortable in interacting with others and connecting. And of course, that's the non-intentional piece, but you can use some of those skills and transfer them to being more intentional and reaching out to people.
So again, the prep work, if you have that elevator pitch and you practice it on your own hundreds of times, that gives you confidence to go into new situations and meet new people. That's a great tip. Thank you.
I think, I mean, just in the interest of time, I just keep it very simple. Know your why. When you know your why, everything flows, and be yourself. I mean, it's hard, especially for those that English is not the first language, so it could be hard. I mean, but it's just as long as you know your why and you're yourself. For example, if I'm approaching and Jane and she's at the Brown University table, and I know why I'm approaching her, it will be an easier conversation. So I mean, stay away from generic statements, and that will be my recommendation. So do your homework in advance, know why you're approaching a specific table, or if you know the speaker, read a little bit before. And so an advice that I just gave a student, I mean, yesterday was, asking question is a skill that has to be practiced. It's not easy to be in a research seminar and come up with a question. That's a skill, but you have to practice. If you don't feel comfortable asking the question in the big room, you can always approach the speaker or the panelist after, or you can follow up via email if it's easier for you. So, but just do it at your own pace, understanding that it's challenging for you as well as it's challenging for the faculty that is on the other side. So it's not easy for anyone in the room. I mean, you can have to, I've been doing this for 16 years and I get equally stressed. I mean, sometimes. So it's practice. I mean, we're on the same boat. So it's just, I mean, know your why, keep it simple, and be professional and be respectful. And values people's time, right? If somebody's dedicating a time for you, be there, and respect people's times, and go directly to the point, without being too straightforward. Good morning, good afternoon, how are you, how things going, and then you go to your question. So that professionalism sometimes is forgotten because we're so focused in getting our goals, but that human part is what people are going to remember. And I think somebody mentioned this earlier before. It's like how you feel is what you're going to remember. So just remember that human part is the connection.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's something that I've had to develop the idea of over the years, is that, those professors and those big shots in whatever research field, they're also human too, just like us. So that's been helpful for me.
Jane, can I add one piece to this as well? As we're talking and as I'm hearing what we're sharing, the other component that comes to mind is the fact that there are different types of communication too, right? So there's the verbal communication, but then there are also the nonverbal aspects of communication. And so thinking about the human aspect, right? And other individuals are reading your how you're behaving, how you're I don't want to say posing, but yeah, your body cues, your body language, and similar, you're trying to read other individuals' body language. And so just learning a little bit about and being mindful of that, I think it's helpful, as well as you're thinking about professional networking and communicating with others.
Thanks, Karina. Okay, so I've gotten quite a few questions about maintaining those networking relationships. And this is something that a question or topic that's come up continually in the past couple of years that I've been with the Alliances. So once you meet somebody at a conference, how do you maintain that relationship without it seeming, fake or inauthentic?
That's a hard, question, to address, because it depends on the circumstances, and um, um, but I'm still in contact with my mentor from my summer program back in 2001.
Wow.
So I do have long-term, relationships that I have kept through the years. And the way to do that is like, and the way some students have done it with me through the years, they send this, I mean, every semester I have a student that send me an update, like a very short, I just want to know how's everything going, and I just want to update you on a few things that have happened. And this is someone that have already completed their PhD. This is not somebody that is reaching out to me because they need a letter or they need something from me. This is some just to keep the relation. And I reach out to my colleagues, often, like to see, how they're doing, to support each other. So this is something that is built through the years. You build that trust. So initially, the relation, is something that you have to take, one step at a time, right? You made the initial contact, you know your why, you know why you're reaching out to this individual. Let's say I met Karina back in 2015, 16. And initially, well, I saw her again in a conference, and then I follow up and we catch up. And that's when that coffee chat comes. Hey, I'm going to be in this conference. I know you'll be going this. Would you have time to catch up and have coffee? And that's why you're still building the relations slowly. If it's too much at once, it might not be as effective or fruitful. So I will say just take it slowly. And sometimes the best relations happens when you're not looking for them. You might be sitting, you happen to sit at a table in the round table discussion. The person sitting next to you might be your colleague in 10 years from now, right? So those, you were not in your strategic plan was not, I'm going to go to that table and talk to Karina, but I happened to meet Karina. And she have followed my career, I have followed her careers, and we mentor each other. So, and it's something that it happens organically, but be proactive about it. That will be my advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to add, but being authentic is very important, as my colleague Dr. Diaz Vazquez shared. Um, for me, there is that human component too, in terms of building the authentic relationships and staying connected. So going back to when I was doing my master's, I stay in contact with my advisor from then, and I would be in contact with my advisor for my undergrad. But unfortunately, he passed away just as I was finishing my undergrad. But, these are individuals who were instrumental to me continuing as in the career path that I am in. And so for that, I am extremely grateful. And without them, I wouldn't be where I am. And so for me, it's important, as part of my upbringing also, I would say, to make sure that I always check in, share updates, ask how they're doing. The connections that I have built are really deep, to the point that, I'm checking in, like, when I visit my family in Southern California, I'll reach out and say, hey, how are you doing, Dr. Reed? Is it possible to come by the lab and say hello? Or I know that, for example, like my specific advisor I mentioned, right? She likes to have coffee in the afternoon. And so I would say, just like when I was your student, would you like to grab a coffee at 2 p.m.? So those kinds of things, and just sharing where you are, brainstorming ideas. Some of the different individuals with whom I have networked and built relationships with, I now reach out to for guidance, or just to bounce ideas off of them, right? So like my advisor from when I did my master's, but then also like Dr. Diaz Vazquez, we work on different sessions where we bring each other's perspectives and expertise, right? And so I'll say, do you want to work on something together? Like, we're going to this conference. Do you want to put a proposal for X, Y, and Z? So those are just some of the examples as to how I continue to engage with individuals with whom I have networked or I have met. And the relationship can evolve over time depending on really the bandwidth of each of the individuals in the relationship. So.
Just going to briefly echo what my colleagues have said. Updates are really, really powerful, especially if they're germane to the conversation that you had. So if you ask them for guidance on how to pick your advisor, for example, once you start a PhD program, once you have that advisor, write to them and say, hey, I just want to give you an update. I'm at such and such institution. I'm working with, this scholar, and I just want to let you know your advice was really helpful, and I really appreciate it. I hope you're well. Love to hear what's going on with you and such and such. Again, you're making them feel helpful, and probably they were helpful. And then absolutely, if there's ever opportunities for collaborations, that's when you can really solidify the relationship with that person in your network. If you can serve on a panel with them, or be a connector between them and somebody else, those opportunities will start to grow as you grow in your career. It's tough. It's almost impossible as an undergrad. It's tough as a graduate student. Maybe there are opportunities to put panels together, but they'll start coming.
Great. And so something I was thinking about is, when you do reach out to those people who have helped you, like Karina and Will and Arnaldo, are they responsive to you? And I just think back to something I did early on in grad school, reaching out to an undergrad mentor who didn't. I said, hey, I'm at grad school now. This is what I'm doing, da, da, da. And I never got a response, and that was really discouraging to me, and I never reached out again. But I wonder, in your experience, are most people responsive?
So that's an important point. I can tell you what I do with my students. If we have any other program directors in the room, so I do meet with all my students one-on-one to develop like a strategic plan for them, and I'm always happy to make that introduction email for the students, because sometimes students will need that help and support to make that intro. But for me to be able to do that, I need to understand your why. And that's why I meet with you first. Then I say, if Jane say, Arnaldo, I would like to go to X university. I'm interested in X programs. And I understand her why. And I say, well, I do have a colleague there. Let me facilitate that introduction for you. Or you want to connect with X faculty, I will help you that. So if you're in an undergraduate institution, there's some, career advisors or mentors, that could help you make that transition. So that's what I do for my students, because sometimes it's hard to send an email and not receive a response. And it could be, I will not take that as a, no, you're not qualified. I will take that as like, the mentor might be busy, because that perhaps most that's probably the case. But persistence is important, right? You could follow up respectfully. So it's important, especially when you ask for letters of recommendation, right? It's important to, sometimes you have to follow up respectfully. And I think it's important that not to give away your dreams because someone didn't respond to your email, right? But try to find mentors that will help you navigate the process, because it could be complex. But that's why mentoring is important. And mentoring goes with networking, because you might need those people that will facilitate that connection for you.
Thanks.
And if I can add, I think the persistence piece is a great point. So following up, because perhaps the individual is just busy when you first reach out. I would say that for me, Jane, for the most part, I tend to get answers, but there have been a few times where I don't. But I guess to Dr. Diaz Vazquez's point, right? You don't want to give up on your dreams, but you also don't want to put all of your eggs or your dreams in one basket. So you got to make sure that you're reaching out to multiple individuals. And, if you hear back from everyone, great. That's excellent connections that you're building. And if you hear back from 1 or 2 out of 3 that you reached out, that's also great. It just depends on the timing and the bandwidth of the individual.
Just to
Mm.
add a little more to that is like, keep your emails to the point.
Mm.
Address them properly, dear doctor or dear professor, and greetings. Be respectful and go directly to the point. I am reaching out because I am interested in research experiences. Be direct. And I'm telling you because from my experience, I used to write really long emails. And sometimes I will get an answer that is just a sentence, and I will be like, why just a sentence? So you just go directly to the point. Attach any document that might be of help, right? I'm interested. I'm attaching my CV for your review. So just be respectful and address people. Start with a dear Dr. Karina Gonzalez Herrera. I hope you're well. I'm reaching out in relation to X, Y, and Z. And I think that professionalism part will help you a lot in your career.
I think 2 pieces of advice here. One, if you're getting better than 50% positive response rate, you're doing great. So don't look at, 1 didn't respond, therefore they don't like me. Number 1, if somebody doesn't respond, it's because something's going on with them. It really is.
Not personal.
Yeah, we tend to think that people think a lot about us and really are deeply focused on us. And generally, that's not the case. This is called the invisible audience effect. And if somebody doesn't reply to you, it's not because they're very, very busy. Now, one thing that you may have done that will have caused that busyness to be a problem for the response is to ask for a lot of information in their response email. Write an email that they can respond to in 30 seconds immediately. And usually that means, hey, can we set up a meeting? And that's uncomfortable for many people. You don't want to be having the conversation. There's a lot of anxiety there. But if you want to get a response rate, keep it up. That's the fastest email that they can send. If they have to go gather information, if you're asking about a program, if you want to ask about certain regulations or policies about something, if they have to go look something up, even if they're well-intentioned and really want to respond to you, there's that time where they could get distracted. Maybe they're working on something right then and they read your email and they say, well, I'll do this, at the end of the day, but by then they're exhausted, and then it just snowballs. So write an email that somebody can respond to basically immediately. And usually that's going to mean, hey, can we set up a meeting? And then you go back and forth and selecting the time and the mode. And so that's going to mean just sort of sitting with that anxiety, talking to somebody. And I have it still. I think we were talking before how, it stays with you. Anxiety is going to be in the road trip of your life. Anxiety is always going to be in the car. And so it's about developing that relationship with your anxiety and knowing that it's always going to be there with you. And it's helpful at times, but it's not the one who can drive. Maybe it can pick the music. So that's my piece of advice.
That's a great tip. Thanks, Will. All right. So I can't believe we're already at only 15 minutes left. So I wanted to transition a little bit more to I guess, communication skills in terms of habits that you may pick up along the way. But one question that was submitted by a student is, you've each worked with students in transition, like undergrad to doing research, doing a research program to grad school, and then grad school to becoming a faculty member or to becoming a professional. So what's a communication habit that students need to outgrow at each of these stages? But I'd also like to kind of reframe it in a positive way is, what are some communication habits that we should grow into in each stage? And are those different? Well, that's a tough one.
Try to take an initial shot at this one. So what I would say is, I think communication is so important in so many different ways. And something that I have learned along the way is that it's always better to initially over communicate and get a sense of how that goes. And then you tailor your approach and the cadence and how much you share based on what the other individuals may prefer. And so I'm thinking more about communication styles and preferred communication styles. So I'm thinking about my experience as an undergrad and as a graduate student, right? So as I was doing my research, I knew what I was doing, but I also needed to make sure that I was relaying what I was doing to my supervisor, my advisor, right? My PI, principal investigator. And so what I would do was put together an email, I would say once every couple of weeks, depending on whether or not my advisor was in lab or traveling at conferences, right? And I would say, over the past couple of weeks, I have been focused on addressing X, Y, and Z question. This is the approach that I have utilized. And so far, this is what I have found. You know, perhaps I got stuck on this specific part of the project, and this is what I'm doing to address that. And I can share what I find out when I see you next. Please let me know if there are any other areas that you think I should focus on, or if I'm missing anything based on our last conversation and the goals we've set for the project. So I would use that and just share that and then get some feedback when my supervisor or my PI return. And I think that was helpful. And so that's something that I have continued to do, like moving on and even outside of like the scientific field, right? Like as I'm working with my colleagues here, communicating the different things that are happening, you know, giving space and room for questions, also for feedback, things like that. That's my initial shot at this, but I would love to hear what my colleagues have to say as well.
So like in any relation, I think we had to understand their communication styles, right? That's something that you could set up initially in your first meeting. Let's say I'm going to join Will's lab. So that initial meeting, I mean, when you're setting up the expectations, what is your preferred communication method, right? Some people will prefer Slack. Some people will prefer Teams. Some people will prefer in-person meetings. Some people like those long emails. So as it's understanding what is the communication style that it will be the one used at that particular lab or department. It might be different from yours, and sometimes we had to adapt, I mean, to the communication styles of the company or the organization without losing who we are as an individuals, right? But it's important that you understand, like, the way the other, I mean, part is communicating, because a lot of the misunderstanding happened because there was no clear communications, or my expectations were in-person meetings and your expectations were like, oh, I just like a virtual meeting once, it depends. I have had in my career a few, I mean, direct supervisors, and they're all communicating a different style. And I for some it was once a year, for other was once every other month, for others were more. I'm more of like a one-to-one individual. I do like those in-person meetings, catch-ups, because I mean, when English is not my first language, those initial writing those emails took longer for me than having a one-on-one conversation with someone. I could express myself better. That has changed with time. I mean, now I think I think if you ask us, Jane, John, Will, Karina, we get so many emails a day, and we're always, I mean, responding via, I mean, written communication. That is really important to get those skills down. You know, it's something that I will, I mean, teach my own kids. It's like writing skills are really important. Invest time in getting your written communication perfect, because that's going to open so many doors for you. But I mean, it's understanding Karina's, I mean, communication styles if I'm communicating with her. So because when those expectations are clear, everything flows better. So that my advice will be to like discuss what will be the communication style prefer for the organization or lab or department.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. understanding different communication styles when you're collaborating with folks. If you haven't had the relationship there just yet, and you're nervous about doing it, there isn't going to be a perfect time for you to reach out to that person. So if we're thinking about a transition, so if you're starting in grad school, or you're starting a postdoc, or you're starting a faculty position, or you're starting at a company, just start doing it then. A mistake that I made, and I would love for you all to learn from a mistake that I made, was waiting until I felt like I was, in a good position to make this outreach. And the truth is, I never actually felt that way. So doing it at the beginning is always great. I like to think about it, those outreaches as, there's a reason we sort of call them cold, right? It's like going into a cold body of water. It's a lot worse if you slowly wade in, just jumping in, getting your head wet, and then moving forward from there. So just sort of try and hit the ground running. And again, anxiety is going to be riding shotgun with you. That is normal. That should be expected, and it's uncomfortable. But eventually, as you and anxiety hang out on that road trip, you'll start to develop a relationship with your anxiety, and we'll be okay moving forward.
And if I can add to this also, Will, because I've heard anxiety a couple of times, and something that I was thinking about earlier is also the imposter thoughts and imposter phenomenon, which sometimes hinders us from doing our very best. And I think something that I've realized is that it is best to reach out to others than to not, right? You will never know what anyone else has to say unless you take the initial chance of actually reaching out and trying to have an opportunity to connect with those people. So that's what I would say. In observing others may have no problem in reaching out. And so why should I have a problem with reaching out to anyone, right? So just think about it that way. And I hope that will empower you to feel more confident to reach out to others.
Thank you. Okay. So this is a little more of a wider topic than communication, but a student asked, what do you consider to be the single most important skill set to succeed as an undergraduate, and what do you wish you knew before you entered a graduate program?
Oof, I wish I knew so many things before. I think understanding that I didn't have to do everything by myself, so that I could rely on others. I think I came to Texas A&M, when I was 22 years old by myself, in the United States. And I did struggle alone because I was afraid of reaching out. So a good skill to develop is, reaching out, understanding what are the resources available on your particular school. Don't wait until it's, too late to reach out. Understand what is on campus. Something that I do a lot is those coffee breaks, lunches with people. So, and I still do it. So I reach out to the chief of the departments or the department head, but at all levels. Administrators, business people, because the more people I know, the more I understand the organization I work for, the better I'm positioned to help others. So I don't only meet with people in my particular field. I meet with people across all fields, because the more well-rounded individual you are, the better your position to advance your career, but also to help others advance their careers. So for me, if I go back in time, I will not wait to ask questions. I will not wait to ask for help. I did waited too long to ask those questions because I was afraid of X, Y, and Z. Those imposter fears that Karina mentioned are real, and they're always present. But I think if something doesn't scare you, it's not. If you, you have to go for something that scares you, right? That challenges you. So I think I see imposter fears in a positive way. Imposter fear means that you're in a room in where you know nothing, and that's the room that you have to be in order to learn something new. So if I go back, I will not be scared of walking into places. Now I walk everywhere. I mean, even if I know nothing about the topic, I'm there, because that's how you learn. Understanding that back when I was 20 was probably made my career that is being very rewarding, but a little less stressful at the beginning.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I would say yes, asking questions, but also being mindful of how you ask those questions too, and thinking about how you develop your independence as a trainee and as a developing scientist or graduate student, right? So asking questions, but making sure that you're trying to address the question first, and then go to someone and say, oh, I'm not sure about how to do this Western blot, but from what I have read and for what I have been researching, this is what I understand, and I believe this is how it's done, but can you provide some guidance, or can you share your thoughts with me based on this? That way, it's like you put in some effort, however much you could and knew, and then you're now asking for help, but at least you put in an initial work to do that. And then the other piece I would say is developing independence. So yeah, learning how to learn on your own by doing research, but also by using your resources. So your peers, other people in the lab, not just the supervisor, but asking others in the lab, and just learning to have that ownership of your own project as you continue to do research is very important.
I think for me, it was I didn't act like I belonged. That imposter syndrome was real. I thought I didn't deserve to be there, and so I wasn't. I was too scared to impose upon others, and that led to situations where I was working with an advisor who was very good at some things, but not so good at others, and I never reached out to people until very late to have those needs met. Now, you cannot expect your advisor to be able to be good at everything in terms of mentoring you. There are some superstars out there who can meet all of your needs as a mentee, but most of your advisors are just going to be regular old humans like us. And if one isn't able to really help you navigate the conference space, reach out to somebody else who can. If another one isn't able to sort of give you some insight into what working in industry will be like, reach out to some people who are working in industry. So once you start identifying what your needs are and recognizing that you deserve to make this outreach, that you're entitled to at least broach the question with others, then you'll be in a much better position.
Thank you. So we are down to the wire, but I would like to give you all the opportunity to maybe give a short piece of advice to walk away with today. Like the most important thing. What's the most important piece of advice that you think you spoke about today?
So, and I think that in my answer, I will address one of the questions in the chat. That is, what's the most valuable piece of advice a mentor has given you? I think if I go back to 2013, I was told by a mentor to say, like, people tend to plan their careers moving forward. Just try to plan backward. So look at what career do you see yourself, right? And at that time, I say, I would love to be a vice provost or a vice dean, and then start planning what do you need to be in order to be the vice dean. So you might need to be an associate director. You might need to be a director. So, and I started planning my career backward. And now I'm in the career that I was proposing back in 2013. And I did follow the steps by connecting with people in those positions and learning from them. So the Alliance gave me that platform to learn from people like Dr. Sheila Thomas, to learn from people like Dr. Don Oppenheim and Don Bronson and many, many others, that is learning from them and then reach out to the mentors. I just spoke with Dr. Don Bronson this morning. It's just reaching out to those mentors, because you will need that support system in your career, regardless at what stage you are. Sometimes, I mean, the farther ahead you are, the more mentors you need, in my opinion. So, but learn how to keep those relations. Not because I did a summer program back in 2001 with Dr. Virginia Cornish. Yes, she was instrumental for me back then, but she's equally instrumental for me now. So it's keeping those relations. And that's by invest in people. Invest in people, invest time. Time is the most valuable, thing that you can give someone. Invest in people, and that will return to you.
Thank you. And quickly, Karina?
I would say one, think about your goals and think about your needs. Based on that, I hope you feel empowered after listening to us and some of our advice to reach out to those individuals who you might want to network with, who may fill in some of those mentoring needs that you may have. And, we've talked a lot about research, but there are also other components such as the emotional component, because life happens as you're going through your training. So think about the various pieces, right? And I say this because some of the individuals that I have networked with and that are part of my mentoring network, those are the individuals who were there to support me and to remind me of the work that I'm doing and to push me to continue to grow in my career and point out other opportunities that were available to me. And they were instrumental in helping me feel more confident so that I could be where I am today. So that's one of the pieces that I would leave you with. Go through that exercise and it should be helpful.
Thank you.
I would go back to the Toni Morrison quote. People won't remember. I'm paraphrasing now because I'm not going to get it exactly right, but they won't remember exactly what you say, remember exactly what you do, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And the reason that we emphasize, for example, getting the wording right of the email or looking up the appropriate title for somebody is because it's how you're going to make them feel. If that hasn't been composed properly. If you're looking for something if you're holding on to an email because you think, oh, what if I don't use the right buzzword? That's absolutely the wrong reason to hold on to that email. They won't make judgment on you because of that. They won't even remember that piece of it. So when you're looking for mentors, when you're looking for helpers, remember that the best ones like feeling helpful. They like feeling connected. They like feeling like they did something meaningful with you. And so reaching out to them to create that opportunity is what you want to go for.
I would agree, Will. Well, thank you so much to my colleagues who are with me here today. This was a great, insightful conversation that I'm going to walk away with some tips to keep in mind myself. And to our students and those who are viewing, please join us again next week for our next conversation with a doctoral scholar on Monday. Have a great evening. Bye.